Hi, I'm Representative Al Baldessaro,
And I'm Janine Nodder, state representative as well.
and we're the host of Who's Looking Out for You. Jeanine, we've had an awful time yesterday and the day before at the State House there, and
Yeah.
it's a shame. But before we get started, what's that book about?
Um, well, it's called An Enormous Crime, and it's a book about the American POWs who were abandoned in Southeast Asia. So, we both serve on the committee at the State House for Veterans Affairs, State Federal Relations. And one of the reasons I asked for that committee is because I come from a military family, and since the late 80s, I've been a POW activist, which means that I worked very hard to try to get to find out what happened to the men that were left behind and why our government left them behind. I knew several of the families. At the end of the show, I'm hoping to get a couple pictures scanned in. One is about the last officially listed POW from the Vietnam War,
Right.
Colonel Charles E.
Awesome.
Shelton. I've talked to you about him
Yes.
before. He was shot down over Laos on April 25th, 1965. It was his 33rd birthday. I've written numerous articles about the POW issue. I wrote a book review about this book, and this book is kind of tied to our guest today because, like I said, I knew the families, of several families of the POWs, MIAs, and then Colonel Shelton's wife, Marion. We were very good friends. We used to talk for hours on the telephone. And she was actually one of my son's she was his godmother, my son
that's
Paul.
awesome.
So I also have a picture of her holding him. In the back of the book, where they have the index, we see the name. Bob, I know the camera can't pick it up, but Bob Smith.
Oh,
Bob
okay.
Smith
That's our guest today.
he's our
Yeah.
guest today.
All
We'll
right.
introduce
Yeah.
him in a minute. He was the senator for New Hampshire for a number of years. I didn't live in New Hampshire until 1998, but even in California, I knew this name. I've seen pictures of him with the POW families, and I know he worked very hard for the POWs. He even went over to Southeast Asia looking for them.
Look,
So,
even as a Marine, I heard his name also and what he did, because I was in the Marine Corps back then, and what he did on the POW, and hopefully he'll expand a little bit on that. But we're one of the only states, I think we're the only state in the country that flies the POW by law on every state building.
yes.
And we're fortunate that we had a fight to do that because the committee killed it, and then we embarrassed them. Senator Jack Barnes and myself went to the papers that night. The next day they reconsidered. But anyways, let's get to our guest.
All
here
right,
anyways.
yes, because I am so honored
Yeah.
to have him here with us because of this issue. So please welcome Bob Smith.
Ginny, nice to see you.
Senator,
Al,
it's an
pleasure.
honor. Welcome.
Thanks for your service for you guys. Thanks
Well-
for your service in the military, and thanks for what all you have done for the families. Believe me, they appreciate it. They need all the help they can get. They've been treated really poorly by not only the Vietnamese and the Lao governments, but unfortunately by our own government.
How did you get involved with the POW issue there? I mean, what?
Well, my dad was not a POW, but he was killed at the end of the war, at the end of World War II. It was weird. He had done all these combat. He was a flyer, naval aviator. He had done all these combat missions and then survived all of that and came home in 1945 and was stationed at Oceana Air Force Base, a naval station, excuse me, in Langley, Virginia, and was just test flying an aircraft. He was the co-pilot, and they were testing it out, and it crashed into the Chesapeake Bay. I was 3 years old. But they didn't, the reason to answer your question directly, they didn't find his body for a couple of days, and they were able to finally get the plane out of the bay. And, and what my mother went through there, trying to get answers about what happened to him, kind of interested me. He wasn't a POW, but it kind of interested me. And so Billy Hendon, who was the co-author of the book that Janine just mentioned, was a congressman from North Carolina at the time. And he and I got to know each other and became friends, and we worked together for years and years and years on the issue. We traveled to Southeast Asia, I don't know how many times, crawled around prisons and went out on an island in Takba Lake where sightings had been taken, POWs had been seen, and it was remarkable. It was quite an experience.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, he's running for U.S. Senate, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Maybe we can find out why. He can give us some input on why are you running?
Well, I had 12 years, or will have by the time the election rolls around, 12 years out of office after having run before, And it's a good time to reflect. You know, people say, well, you know, why are you coming back now? Look at the situation in our nation right now. I mean, if we don't turn this country around very soon, and when I say turn it around, I'm talking about the freedoms that we're losing, NSA spying, IRS harassing people who have a different political persuasion,
Right.
Obamacare telling you which doctor you can have and can't have, and which health policy you can have or can't have, and you know, on and on. Not to mention a 18 trillion dollar national debt that we're passing on to our children. You can't get answers on Benghazi. The foreign, the nations around the world, including Israel, are very disturbed about our foreign policy and the way we're handling things. Look, these are challenges. I don't view them as problems. There's a difference between a problem and a challenge. A challenge is something you rise up to. And the center really for me is we're Americans. We are Americans.
Right.
We rise up to the challenges. We rose up to the challenges when we scaled those cliffs, when those guys scaled the cliffs in Normandy. And we rose up to the challenge during the Depression. We rose up to the challenge, you know, in the Revolutionary War or the Civil War, whatever. And so what it really boils down to, Al, and I think, and Janine, I think you'll see this if you look at it, it's the central planners in Washington, D.C. who want to plan everything we do versus freedom.
Right.
And I think I'm going to go out there against, you know, Senator Shaheen. I realize there are others in the primary, but I'm not ignoring that. But I mean, I think the job for all of us running in a primary is to show which candidate would be the best one to articulate the differences between the Senator Shaheen, and ourselves, and then let the voters sort it out. Excuse me. And so, you know, that's it. It's pure and simple. You want more freedom or less freedom? You want you know, more spying or less spying? You want more Obamacare or less Obamacare? I'm going to vote to repeal it.
Did
and
you
so
know?
forth.
Did you know what I didn't know until last night? I did my homework last night on it because I wanted to know who Bob Smith was. I
He's
knew
a
about
very
his,
tall man.
He's a very tall man. I knew about his POW stuff, but what's not out there, and I found out last night. Maybe I made a mistake. You're a veteran. You served in the Navy Reserve.
I did. No, well, I did. I served on active duty too. I had 5 years in reserve and 2 years in active duty.
How come that message not out there? People don't. I didn't
well,
know that until last
You know,
night.
you know how veterans are. We're kind of. I'm proud of the service, as most veterans are. All veterans are, and but I don't wear it on my sleeve. But I was proud
No.
to serve. I served in Vietnam.
But you know, veterans support veterans.
Yeah, they do.
And we want veterans in there, politicians, elected officials. I should say politicians, elected officials.
Well, I'll tell you something. In Washington today, it's changed a little bit because of the Gulf Wars, and so we do have some Gulf War veterans in both parties
served
who are
in the Gulf War
who are
myself.
serving now. But for the most part, it was going down fast. And I don't think when you start talking about things, and you'll understand this, op tempo and things like this, that these phrases in the military, that some of these people have no clue what we're talking about. Least of all, the President of the United States. I don't think he understands what it means. You got people all over the world with less weapons, less money, and we're giving them more to do all over the world. And it's serious, and we need to get a handle on it. And that's why I'm back. I love my country. I want to serve my country. It's the way I can serve is to run. I'm hoping that other people will serve in a different way, in the sense that they can help me, support me, and let's see if we can take our country back.
I just heard you say that you served in Vietnam. What part of Vietnam? and
Well,
what
I
years?
was in the Navy, so I didn't have the. My brother was on the ground in Vietnam in Long Binh, but I was in the Navy. We were in. I was on an oil tanker, and we served in the what they call Yankee Station, which was off in North Vietnam between the island of Hainan and North Vietnam, and we would refuel the carriers as they did their bombing raids off the north, over the north, and then we would come down into the Mekong area at the bottom of the country, South Vietnam, and supply the little boats,
U-boats
swift
and
boats, the
swift
swift
boats,
boats
right.
that used to go up into the rivers. And these guys would come out, and we'd provide stuff for them. Sometimes there'd be wounded guys that we would take on the ship and bring out. It was quite an experience. You know, you're glad you did it. You're glad it's over, but you're glad you did it. And it was I can remember. It's ironic that when you look back on it, actually, John McCain flew off the same aircraft carrier that we refueled, and he was shot down. Not right when I was there,
Right.
but just within a few weeks. So you got two guys who became U.S. senators who wound up serving in the same theater of war at the time. But it was, I remember one quick anecdote which really still to this day bothers me. We would be out there on station, and what happens is the oiler will go along like this, and then the carrier will come up alongside, and then maybe a destroyer comes up alongside on the other side, and the hoses go out, and you refuel. You pump all the fuel into into the carrier, into the destroyer. But the carrier, you also have to, not only the fuel, most of the time it was a nuclear carrier, but you had to pump the jet fuel on for the aircraft. And sometimes they'd say, all right, you'd be sitting there refueling them, and 40 or 50 aircraft would take off on a bombing run,
Right.
and 4 or 5 would not return. And I remember him saying on board, well, Captain so-and-so, so-and-so, or Commander so-and-so, so-and-so did not return.
That's
And
a
I'm
shame.
thinking, I really felt guilty about it, still do to this day, because I knew before his family
Right.
that he did not return from that mission.
That's a tough one.
Very,
That's a tough
very,
one.
very emotional thing to think about now. So,
Is this stuff on your website?
yeah, the fact that
it?
I'm a veteran is on there, yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
Vietnam and
Yeah.
this. And the reason why I'm asked that, like we're going to that dinner tonight, and I looked at one of the tables there, and I see a friend of mine, retired Marine Corps Sergeant Major, sitting at a table of an individual who may run or may not. And I'm just wondering, he normally goes with veterans. That's why I'm asking these questions, because our show goes out, and a lot of people
other
play
people-
this show.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
So I want to make sure tonight that he understands and knows that you are, in fact, a Vietnam
We had a lot of
veteran.
veterans that over the years when I was in office that we helped. I was very proud of it. We did, of course, the academies and nominated people to the military academies, which was great. All the young people that,
Yeah, I
We're
have a
so
son
good.
that may want to go to one of those.
well, there you go.
Well, this leads us right into that, why I asked that question, into like national security. You
national
have some
security.
stuff on there, like Ukraine, Afghanistan.
Oh, I've got
and
a
other
whole
stuff.
list of
So maybe you
talking
can
points.
let's hit him up and see where his positions are.
All
Well,
right, well, I did want to mention one thing before we get into that. The first Wednesday of every month in Veterans Park in Manchester,
Yeah.
the veterans have a candlelight vigil. And I believe there's a post there with your name on it.
Yeah, I've
There's-
attended it many times. Not recently, but I have attended it, yeah.
Well, I haven't been in a long time, but I need to go again because there's a new
Yeah, I haven't been in a long
veterans
time
group that's organizing, and I'm supposed to meet somebody there and introduce them to
Well, let me
some of
know
the
the night
veterans.
you're
So
going to go, and I'll go
I'll be
with you.
going
Next
April, whatever, the
Wednesday?
first Wednesday of April. I'll be
Okay,
going.
first, okay.
So,
But it's all about peace through
Mm-hmm.
strength. I know that was Ronald Reagan's phrase,
peace
but it
through
was
strength. Yes,
so
and that was a
accurate.
question that one of our viewers had me write down for you was because we're seeing cuts in the military, which is very concerning to me. I have sons in the military, and I worry. I worry for our country and our borders. And so, where's your stance? Would you support building our military back up or cutting it away?
No, we've cut way too much, and promoting the common defense is a very, very specific requirement of the United States Constitution, and we need to make sure that we have adequate weapons and whatever it takes, manpower, to be strong. Because if you look at what you mentioned now, the situation in the Ukraine. I mean, you can just see that Putin has no respect at all for Obama. He's just going to push his way.
Right.
He knows nothing's going to happen. Whereas Reagan, if you recall, he went to Reykjavik, Iceland, took Gorbachev on, made Gorbachev believe that we had the capacity to take all of his missiles out with the Strategic Defense Initiative, which
Star
we really
Wars, yep.
didn't.
Right.
It was on the table. It was on the research table, but it was not
The Star Wars or whatever. that was
exactly. But
called,
it was
right?
not perfected. So, but Gorbachev thought that it was, and so Reagan left that summit with his wife disagreeing with him, because Gorbachev offered this weapons reduction, which Reagan refused because he wanted to make sure that the world was totally safe. And so he bluffed Gorbachev and won the bluff, even though his own advisors and his wife too said don't do it. He still did it. He walked away, and look what happened. The wall came down, and the rest
did.
is history.
Reagan
Turned
was
out
a
to be
good
one of the
leader.
greatest.
Well, today, of course, to our Patriots 2 missiles that, of course, are built here.
Yep.
Parts are in New Hampshire
Sure.
and Massachusetts.
That's right.
We have the technology to shoot this down.
We do, but here's this is something I was the chairman for a while of the subcommittee on the Senate Armed Services Committee called the Strategic Forces Subcommittee, And if you, the easiest way to think about it is if you're a baseball player and you're out in the field, and when that ball is coming down at you, fast, you got to get your glove up there and catch
That's
it.
right.
So in the missile technology, it's called the boost phase. You catch a missile in the boost phase, or you catch it in the descent phase. And those Patriot batteries were catching missiles in the defense phase.
In the head.
And they didn't get them all.
That's right.
And if the terrorists get a hold of all this stuff, and these missiles, and they start throw an array of these things out there against Israel, say 100 of them or 200 at the same time, we can't get them all. Right. But with the technology that Reagan was talking about, we could have assets in space that immediately catch these missiles when they take off, and you hit them as they come up. Before they get up, they have to come up, arc, select a target, and come back down.
Right.
And so those are the bigger missiles. And so that's what we've got to, that's what we have to perfect. And of course, Clinton cut it, and Obama's not doing anything with it.
I don't have any faith in
everybody calls it, and they make fun of the
Not
call. They
either.
used to call me spaceman because
yeah.
I advocated this. I mean, come
Right.
on. I mean, this
No,
is.
it makes sense.
Well, somebody criticized me in an article in the paper the other day about this, about talking about weapons in space. Let me tell you something. If we didn't have the capacity in space to stop countries like China from disabling our satellites, and we do have that capacity,
Right.
it's kind of secret stuff, but I mean, in terms of talking about it, but it is true, we have it, and we couldn't use our cell phones, we couldn't find out what the weather was,
Right.
we couldn't operate our military assets, our cyber assets in the military, because they would disable our satellites. All this stuff is queued off of these satellites in space. So it was a fascinating subject, and one that I supported the research on.
Well, I'm glad that you were in there, in the ball game there, because it made a difference here over the years with the technology as we advanced, especially in the military with the GPS.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember in Desert Shield, they gave us a box, a 10-digit grid GPS. Many of us didn't even know what it was
Right.
or how to use it. Took us a while
Yep.
to figure it out. It was all new technology.
Yeah. I have something on my notes that I don't
Go
remember
ahead.
what it means. AWAC, can you help me with that?
AWACS.
AWACS.
Yes, AWACS. I'm sure he was involved.
See, I wasn't in the
back
military,
then.
so I don't speak in letters.
That's
I
been
need
around for a
words.
while.
Well,
they
they
were,
were the aircraft that flew up and coordinated all the spying, and
They
yeah.
could pick up on communications and where
Communications,
aircraft were flying.
The
and
helicopters with the thing goes
no,
around?
it's actually
No.
it's airplane. It looks like it has a
Plane.
big dish on top.
right.
Okay.
You know, and
It's
they
like a
look,
big dome on the top
Right.
of it. You ever see a round thing?
yeah,
I
and the
recall a picture.
technology is so advanced in those today than it was back years ago when the Armed Services Committee were pushing, to fund those programs.
Well, I know, Al, that's something that but you know, and I know Janine knows too, is we also have to think about these guys when they come home. I mean, one of the differences in Vietnam and today in these wars that we're in, especially in Afghanistan, guys didn't survive
Right.
20 years ago or 30 years ago in Vietnam. They didn't survive these injuries on the battlefield. Now they are, and when they come home, they're in really tough shape. And
No kidding.
it's really, to me, I'll use the word painful, but it's also sad that we have to, that charities, God bless the charities for what they do. You watch these poor guys that come back,
Right.
and gals that are back, and they're hurt, terribly hurt. They're injured, some of them brain injuries, limbs.
Yes, traumatic brain injury.
Right, all
Yep.
kinds of stuff, and these charitable organizations are helping them, but that's our job too.
That's right.
I mean,
The
we
federal
sent them
government
there.
owes them.
We sent them
That's right.
there, and if we're going to give them
Mm-hmm.
what they need to defend themselves in the battle, we need to give them what they need to take care of themselves when they come back.
I'm glad
and
you
we
brought
haven't
that
done
up.
that.
You want to know, and it really disgusts
That's
me,
on the
is
committee, too.
New Hampshire is the two states in the country that does not have a full-service hospital. Would you support pushing legislation to push New Hampshire to be on a pilot program for a medical ID card for veterans, since they're not going to fund a full-service hospital?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we need to do is see what the veterans want. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
some veterans, I guess probably most veterans prefer a veterans hospital.
Yes.
Because it's just the camaraderie-ship.
That's my number one
And
priority.
as long as
Mm-hmm.
those veterans hospitals have the capacity to give these vets everything, the full medical technology and attention they deserve,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way it should be. I mean, whatever these guys serve their country, and whatever we need to do to provide for them, we need to do it. And you know, when you think about it, every time you turn around, we're sending billions of dollars to somebody
Other countries.
across the world who
Right.
don't even support
Spending money
us.
on all kinds of programs that the federal government
Oh, my
should
God.
not be funding,
Yeah.
but they are supposed to take care of our military.
Right, and they're always saying, well, we don't have enough money to build a hospital, or we don't have enough money to help this poor guy who needs a face reconstruction because of being horribly injured.
Right.
And yet we'll throw money away in some welfare program,
Right.
somebody that doesn't work, doesn't want to work, and
And they
never
use
has
that
worked.
EBT card to go shopping and buy new clothes.
that's right.
and
Not only that, they buy it in the
Yeah.
convenience store where it's twice
Yes.
as much as it is in the regular
The
supermarket.
reason why I bring this up here, because they're saying the numbers don't match. We're about 135,000 veterans in New Hampshire. The numbers aren't there to support, because the numbers may be about 23 to 36,000 veterans being treated in specialized clinics. This is why I was, my committee, our committee, went to a Plan B. Then if that's the case, get the medical cards, especially for up north. These veterans that got to travel 2-3
Sure.
hours.
Or build a top-notch hospital.
That's right.
And supplement it with allowing, let other people who are perhaps come in if you need, you know, the problem with these hospitals is specialty. You know, if somebody needs really special attention, say facial reconstruction or something like that, maybe it's not at the hospital, well then let's pay to get that person to wherever he or she needs to go to
Hopefully
get that
within the
work
state.
done and take care of it.
Right.
And do it.
Yes.
And don't be worried.
agree.
Look, everybody has to. The budget is a budget, but it's not the budget. I used to say this all the time. No one was more cost efficient than I was. I mean, I voted pretty much against almost. I was accused of voting against everything. But as you well know, both of you are in the legislature. It's not about voting against everything. It's prioritizing and voting for the right things within the framework of a budget. We don't do that in America. We just say, oh, we'll blow the budget, we'll go over,
Right.
spoil $1 trillion over budget, and we'll spend it on this and spend it on that. Prioritize. What's more important than our veterans?
That's right.
I mean, come
But,
on.
you know, he led us right into the budget there, because, you know, the Senate for first 4 years did no budget. Then Obama finally on the 5th year came up with a budget that was voted down, 100%, 100 senators
Yeah, I
against
mean,
it.
it works differently in the legislature here, thank God. But we have, I believe it's 13 appropriations bills in the U.S. Senate, and in the Congress, and the interesting thing is that you've heard these terms. I don't want to play inside baseball. Your listeners will go batty trying to listen to it all, but you have what is called a continuing resolution, and that means that they didn't do their job. They didn't pass the individual funding bill. You have a defense appropriations bill. You have an education. You have an energy you have all these appropriations, and they're all specifically about that subject. So what happens? They don't pass them. And then what happens is they roll them all together into what they call a CR, continuing resolution, and just kick the can down the road, spend more money, don't make the cuts, and they never really pass the appropriations bills. They should be forced to pass them or they don't go home, period.
I could never understand why they, like No Child Left Behind or Race to the Top or
Common
Common Core,
Core.
all
rotten to the
unfunded
core.
mandates.
Unfunded mandates and
let's
central
define that.
planners planning your life.
Right.
You know,
Some peop-
people criticize me. I'm sorry. Did you?
I'm sorry. No, some people don't know what that means. Unfunded mandates. What it, you know.
Well, I knew what it was.
He
And
knew
you know
right
what
off the bat,
I'll tell
right?
you, as a school board member, I was a school board member before I went to Congress, and we would get some mandate from the federal government that said you must fund a whatever program for something. No money, but it's required by law.
Right.
And so you have to put that program in, even if you don't have a student that goes in. It's got to be there. And so you put it in, and sometimes it's one student, and you have to do a $250,000 program for one student. You got to set up with the equipment, the teacher, all the support stuff, and it's outrageous, and it's mandated. And so this is what we're dealing with, and that's what I call. People criticize me for saying central planners. They say it sounds like the Soviet Union. Well,
Yeah.
it does. I mean, central planners. People are planning our lives for us, telling us what doctor to have, telling us what we teach our kids. When are we going to wake up?
You ain't kidding.
I
mean,
post almost every day something about Common Core and how ridiculous it is, and
I've been reading up on that. I
Stupid
mean,
math.
it's really
The
outrageous.
testing and everything else. The
They're
Smarter
forcing you to
balance.
test. What they're doing, they're forcing people to take tests forcing the kids to take them. And the only way you can basically deal with it is tell your kids stay home, I guess, that day, the day of the test or whatever. I know parents are really outraged by it.
Well, my son had to take the Smarter Balance test, and I didn't even know, and he hated it. He said, he and his best friend said, "Mom, do something about that Smarter Balance. It's horrible."
It's
I'm
amazing.
trying.
We just
trying.
sit back and, you know, it's like the frog in the pot, right? The water gets so hot you didn't realize it.
As a senator, I mean, are you prepared to kick in the door and say, let's get this budget going every year and comply with the law?
We do. I mean, I voted for a balanced budget amendment. It's a shame we need an amendment, but at least with an amendment, you're forced to do it. And they ought to do it anyway because it's fiscally responsible, but they don't. So let's have the amendment, and then they have to. And that is the first, you know, you guys know, you're legislators, but
Right.
you put the budget out on the table and you say, here's how much money we have to spend, whatever it is, X number of $1 trillion in the federal budget, and here's what we have to spend it on. Some things have to go, and some things have to get increased, and some things have to get decreased or even
You
eliminated.
prioritize.
Exactly. It's
Right.
all about priorities. That's all. And you know, you have, and in addition, the other thing which people don't talk about enough is growth policies. Our growth policies, I guess, wrong grammar. If you, in addition to cutting, if you cut taxes and cut like corporate taxes, like capital gains or inheritance tax, we call it the death tax, and cut the tax rates down, you can spur the economy, and then you'll get more revenues that'll help you to do what you have to do with
Right.
your budget. Now, maybe you'll get a surplus out of it, and then we start paying the debt down. But right now, we don't even have it balanced. We're about,
That's right.
I don't know, gosh, 500 trillion, 500 billion out of balance.
How long did you serve in the Senate?
12 years in the Senate and 6 years in the House.
Wow, awesome.
Oh, so you were probably a congressman when I knew about read about
Congressman
you.
from 85 to
Yeah.
90.
I went on Wikipedia last night and pulled, if anyone wanted information on you, I mean, it's out there. You just Google, search, Senator Bob Smith, some good information out there.
Yeah, some of it's not true, but
Well,
okay.
yeah.
Oh,
I mean, yeah,
you
right.
should see the stuff they write
You
about
gotta
us.
see,
I'm sure.
I am probably one of the most attacked state reps in
Yeah.
the state because I'm not a politician.
Yeah,
and
but
I
you know what? You look
tell
and you
'em
say,
like
where did
is.
it come from?
That's right.
Where did the attacks come from? And,
Yep. And then the other side.
and then you
and-
say, badge of honor.
Well,
That's right.
They
But I
helped
still
me
come
get,
out
they
number
helped
one
us
in my
get
district.
reelected.
That's right.
Exactly.
So the attacks there.
That's it.
But you know, on that budget, you know, I don't understand why New Hampshire does not get their fair share of the gas tax for the federal roads, like 93. Why we have to scrape, you know, borrow and try to put in another gas tax just to fix it. You know, when you look at Massachusetts, them senators there kicked in the door to get trillions of dollars for that big dig, and they're still paying.
Well, what a great example you just used of how, and I was there when all that was taking place. You have to start getting into what is the gas tax really for? The gas tax is for federal highways.
Right.
It's supposed to be to construct federal highways, not the Big Dig. The Big Dig was an inside Boston project that Tip O'Neill pushed the money into.
Right.
I mean, it's power. It's all about the abuse of power from the insiders. That's a good example. But why not just leave the gas tax here in New Hampshire? Don't take it away from us. Leave it here and let us take care of it here.
Right.
Because they're going to send all that money to Washington, pay a big bureaucracy there to administrate it, then they send it back. And because we're a small state and we only have 2 congressmen and somebody else has, California's got whatever, 55,
Right.
and God knows how many Massachusetts and New York have, we're going to lose because it's the power brokers. I'll tell you, and I don't know how your conference committees work in the New Hampshire legislature, but I have seen it I have witnessed it firsthand when people will come into these conference committees when you have an appropriations bill, and the guy's the chairman, he'll slam his fist down, Republicans and Democrats, I've seen them both do it, slam the fist down on the table and say, by God, there's $50 million in here that I want to study this in my state, and I'm not doing a thing with this committee, nothing. We're not going to meet until you tell me that's in there, and then we'll go from there. Now, you tell me
Right.
that's democracy?
Yeah, we see. That's right. It's
And
a
that's what
shame.
happens, and that's why we lose because we don't have we don't have the power because we don't have the numbers. However, The best way to do it is change the policy, leave the money in New Hampshire where it belongs, and let New Hampshire deal with the roads.
Right.
And they will,
Right.
because they'll have the money.
Well, we could do a whole show on this. I mean, why does
Oh,
it cost $1
you ain't
million
kidding.
to pave a mile of the roads in
Sure.
New
Right.
Hampshire? And,
And-
why
'Cause
are
you're
they
paying a-
dipping into
Yeah.
those funds and using
right.
them for other things? If
Right.
We have
But-
more than enough money
Right.
just for the
But the
Darcy
bottom
Dippy
line
going
is
on the roads
93
and
is a
gas
federal
station.
highway. You know what I mean? And we're like maybe almost 200 million short because we're ciphering money in other areas.
Well,
and
sure.
we know that.
Well, that's what happens. I mean, here again, Al, it's a pot of money that comes from the gas tax, and it's set on the table, and you have all these congressmen and senators, and you know every state has 2 senators, as you know, but congressmen, the numbers are different.
Right.
And they all sit around that table, and they're all looking at that big pot of money down there, and they're saying, "Hey," and that's where Tip got his $3 billion. And when you take that $3 billion that he took for that, what's the big dig?
The big dig, right?
That cuts a lot out of what you're going to get here, or some
Right.
state like Idaho or Utah or some place where they don't have the numbers of congressmen to be able to effectively challenge it.
Right. Well, you had some other things on the list that we wanted to find out from the senator there, so you want to bring them up and
Yep. Well, this is New Hampshire. Second Amendment. Second Amendment is big here, and
well, you know something. What the problem we have here, and with the U.S. Constitution, with the New Hampshire Constitution, I'm a former chairman of the State and Federal Relations Veterans Affairs. What we see is Republicans and senators that go to Washington, they forget about the New Hampshire Article 2A, where you have the right to protect yourself.
Individual
state,
right. Yep,
Individual
excellent,
right.
exactly right.
So when
Yep.
they vote, like somebody like, let's say Scott Brown from Massachusetts wants to run here, he voted to ban an assault weapon.
Yep.
It's really not an assault weapon unless it's automatic and it's a military weapon.
And you want to, and the individual behind it wants
Right.
to assault somebody.
Where are you on the New Hampshire Constitution and
Yeah.
taking it with you as a senator?
Well, the New Hampshire, as you correctly stated in that 2A of the New Hampshire Constitution, it points out that it is a right of the individual to have that gun. It's an individual liberty. You don't even need a constitution. It's there. It's your right. And so with the Second Amendment, of course, it's clarified even more in the sense that they made it a part of the Constitution because that's exactly what they were afraid of. They wanted every individual to be able to protect him or herself from a tyrannical government, possibly, but also, perhaps even more importantly, to be able to protect themselves, period, to have the right to own that weapon. And there's no clarification in there. It doesn't draw distinctions between handguns and shotguns and
Right.
rifles. I mean, it's just pure nonsense. And as I've said 100 times, if you were to say to the press, okay, well, let's go to the First Amendment now. We think maybe reporters for newspapers should have less access to the politicians than the reporters for the TV and the radio. Why? Well, what's the difference?
Right.
I mean, the Constitution is very clear. The Second Amendment is a constitutional amendment. First Amendment is a constitutional amendment. You can't play with it. It's law. That's it. You can if you want to change it, you can try to repeal it. We did that with prohibition. But
Well,
the
you're
point-
running against somebody, Senator Shaheen,
Yeah.
who, and I know you won't say it, but I can, who on Second Amendment rights are brain dead, and I'll say that. But I mean, I don't know why she continues to vote against New Hampshire's Constitution.
I don't get it either, and I don't understand Brown. I think this is going to be, as we're recording, the word is that he's going to run, and if he runs, he runs. Bring him on. I don't care.
Right.
I mean, the people of New Hampshire are going to have to make this decision here as to whether they want to give up our gun rights and other rights as well, less freedom and you name it. But I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, how do people? I don't understand how people get elected. But let me that take that position. I mean, I had an A+ from the NRA and an
Yeah,
A+ from the
we
Gun
do.
Owners of America.
Right.
And I'm
We
sure
do
you
too.
guys do too. And I'm proud of it. I had 18 years of it. I don't know of any votes that I didn't get the right grade
Right.
on, and I'm proud of it, very proud of it, because it was a Second Amendment issue. But on the other hand, what are we going to do? I mean, I think it's so important. Every single gun owner out there watching us now, or who care, you need to get yourself registered, and you need to get yourself to the polls. In the primaries and in the general election,
That's right.
especially in the Senate race, because, and I think in the House races as well, and I'm not sure in the legislatures, wherever there's an anti-gun person running, you better be out there, because this is serious business, and
Yes.
they're trying to get more and more control over you, and it's all about the vote.
Well, we
It's
see
all
what
about the
happened
vote.
with Hitler, who was elected official when he
yes.
took away their guns.
But
and,
see, we can
you know,
vote, and that's the thing I tell people. We can vote. You know, I tell people, sometimes you get, you've all done these town meetings, or you have a forum, and you got a bunch of people that are yelling at you, about this or that. It happens. And I always tell them, the thing is, when you think about the sacrifices our founders made, and the sacrifices our military's made, the blood that was shed, and what they did for us, the founders, their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor, all you have to do is vote. That's all you have to do. And when somebody gives me an earful, usually on the opposite side of what I believe, I always ask them, do you vote?
That's right.
In fact, it
Understand.
happened recently at a forum, and a guy said, no, I don't vote. I said, you know what? I'm not interested.
That's right.
Gee.
I do
Bye.
the same thing on there.
Yeah.
I ask them, did you vote?
Knock yourself out. Shut up.
Don't
Like
complain.
Reagan said, shut up.
That's right.
Let's move on. You don't vote, you don't care.
Right.
Oh, yes, no, you don't. Because you have the right to vote, and that's where it happens. People, they always call us a democracy. We're a republic.
Yes.
Right.
Because we elect people to go to Concord and to go to Washington to represent us.
Right,
And
we're a
people always
nation of
say,
laws.
you're running against Washington. There's nothing, Washington itself, the city, the location, that's not bad. It's the people who go there.
That's right.
Who pass these stupid laws that cause us to lose our freedoms. That's what's bad. And that's what I'm running against. That establishment that
Well,
does
that's you brought up about town meetings. Are you doing town meetings around the state?
Well, we're going to. We're going to
Because
start doing some.
we'll,
yeah.
we'll work out a date here, because Londonderry here
Yeah.
is we were the 9th largest community, but after the last census, Hudson, I think, has about 20 people more than us, so they moved into 9th, we're 10th. But anyways, I'd be more than happy to set up a date with you at our town hall to hold a town meeting.
No,
Yeah,
I'd
he's
love
to
to
do
coming
something
to
like that.
Merrimack,
Coming to
next week.
Merrimack
Yeah.
too, because
We
I
have to
think
be
that's
careful. They
important.
always, sometimes when you call them town meetings, the town gets a little upset because that is a town meeting, but a
Right.
forum, some kind
Right,
of a public
town
forum.
forum,
Yeah,
public
yeah,
forum.
exactly.
Most people understand.
Yeah,
that.
they do.
And I'd be more than happy to set that up here in
Okay.
Londonderry.
We'd like to do it. We'll do it.
And so that way people
Commitment
can
made
come.
right here on the air.
Yep, there you go. And people
I'll
can
do it.
come and ask. I mean, I've been staying away from the Senate. I'll be honest, the
No,
Senate.
I understand. Well, you know,
because
that's-
Karen Testament is a friend.
Well, she's
But
my
do
friend.
do I
That's
think
hard.
she has a chance?
Look,
You know what I mean? So I'm going
I
to stay away.
understand-
But
I
you understand what I'm
I
saying for
understand
that?
friendships.
But
I
veterans,
don't beat people up. I
Right.
think the beauty of this whole system we have is, and I'll tell you a little story about it. But you go into that voting booth, and you pull the curtain. You got to say to yourself, who is the best person
what
that I
is the
think?
best
And
interest
you
of
have
New
to go
Hampshire?
with
Right.
your gut. You
You
have
gotta
to.
go with your gut.
You
And
have
I
to
said
say,
to my, I
who's
said
the
to my
best
wife,
candidate.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I said to my wife, when I go in to vote in Tuftonboro, and you go in to vote in Tuftonboro, we better get 2 votes out of Tuftonboro.
Right. You know, Representative Tim, what's his last name? He's a state rep. Tim, he's on your.
Comerford.
Comerford.
Oh, come, yeah, Tim.
He
He's
called
a good
me.
guy.
He said, Bob's a little bit like you. He said, he'll look you in the eye and tell you like it is, whether you like it or not. He's going to be straight with you. He told me you won't get that from the other candidates. Is that true?
Well, I think so. I'll
What
tell
do you
you
mean
the
you
truth.
think so? What's that
Well,
mean?
I am. Yeah, I will tell you
Right,
the truth, and
okay.
it isn't always pleasant. But I think what you have to what people need to understand is we've got some serious issues that we're facing, challenges as I call them, and we got to rise to it. I mean, that's what we do. We don't sit back and whine. We get up and take it on, and we don't want to lose our Second Amendment rights. We don't want to lose our any rights.
Right.
under
And
the
we don't want
Constitution.
Obamacare.
And
We
our
don't want
First Amendment
Obamacare.
rights, freedom of speech is being trampled on.
And
you
remember,
know?
yeah, that is.
Political correctness, that's bull.
Absolutely. It's happening every day.
Right.
I mean, Obamacare, I mean, it's a good, Obamacare is a big issue here. I mean, there are people who don't go to the political party events that we go to because they don't really care. They're hardworking people. They're out there. They're in that 40% that is undeclared. It's interesting. People realize 40% of the voters in the state are not declared for either party.
That's right.
What does that tell you?
Yeah.
It tells you that maybe the parties aren't doing that great a job here, but those people out there, not only in our parties but also in the undeclared, who are working. How would people always accuse Republicans of declaring a war on women?
That's
How would you
bull.
like to be a woman today who was 5 months pregnant, who was told that she was going to lose her health insurance, lose her doctor.
Right.
So you got to get, now you're 5 months pregnant, maybe you've had 2 other children. You'd know better than me, Janine. And now you're told I got to get another doctor or lose my health insurance and pay more for it and get less coverage. Now that's a war right there. And it's uncalled for.
You
It's
ain't
not
kidding.
America. It's not what we stand for. It's not what we believe in. And, you know, to me, the choice is clear in this election. If that's what you want, Shaheen is your person, without a doubt. And that's why I'm telling you, tell it like it is. If you want somebody to choose your doctor and you want somebody else to choose your insurance and you want the NSA looking into your, you know, peeking around on you with a satellite and spy and listen to your phones, if that's what you want,
Right. Go
There
for
she
her.
is.
That's right. But you know, this Warren woman, I'm glad you brought that up, because you know they turned an attack on individuals' constitutional right, freedom of religion, into a war. They took their right away, forcing contraceptive onto these individuals. That's where the war, what they used, and they used and abused it, and they won the media war.
And
It's a
think
shame.
about that. You're a nun, perhaps, or a doctor in a Catholic hospital,
Right.
or a Catholic school, and you're told that you have to do things that are against your religion, forced, not told,
Right.
forced to do it. That's not the
That's-
America
no.
that I want my grandchildren
Republicans
to inherit.
have nothing against contraceptive. I mean, I myself, I'm pro-life. I have no issues with the issue, contraceptive. But don't force and take away somebody's rights.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
where the issue.
Those women had a rally up at the State House a few years ago.
Yep, that's right.
What we call, my friend and I, we called them the loose women because we were sitting in the back of the State House and we can hear them ranting and screaming in front of the State House. And then one of the reps that went around with their camera and took pictures, and I posted the pictures and I printed them, so I have pictures of their signs. I'm not joking. They were holding up signs, Uppity Sluts United, proud to be a slut. I mean, some of these were young
Yeah,
like
it's a
girls. I'm like,
shame what
oh,
they're
look at
teaching
that
them,
girl. Her mother
you
must
know.
be so proud of her.
You know,
It was embarrassing
And you know,
to be the same gender.
saying that reminds me of what I know is coming in the ads once, if you win, certainly if you win the nomination, what's going to happen if I win the nomination, all this kind of stuff, and I think my grandkids are going to see this stuff. It never goes away.
It's hard, yeah.
Once you print something,
It's there.
that's sometimes what people say in the media, I'm not necessarily talking about the reporters, although sometimes they're guilty of it, but if people write something, it's kind of cowardly in a way if it's negative, because you never can take it back. I mean, it always is there. It'll always be on the internet, or they can always look it up, even if you retract it,
It's still
So
there.
you really should be careful what you say. And it's a shame that, I've said this over and over, and I may have said it the last time we talked, Janine, but I'll say it again. I don't have a thing against Jean Shaheen. I believe she believes what she believes.
Personally, I like
did say
Jean
that.
I
Shaheen.
like
Yeah.
her too.
Right.
And she believes what she believes.
right.
I respect it. I used to debate Ted Kennedy on the floor of the Senate, and Ted believed what he believed. And I
Right.
didn't mind debating him because he didn't compromise.
Right.
He was, by gosh, I'm going to whip your butt, he'd say to you, and he'd go out there and he'd do his best to do it. And I'd do my best to do it with him. But at least you respected him because he stood up for what
And
he
you
believed
still
in.
had a beer or a glass of milk,
Get
whatever.
over with, have a
yeah.
glass of wine or whatever,
That's
and
right.
laugh.
After and I do the same thing with the Democrats.
Exactly,
Right.
but so I don't. She believes what she believes, and I just want people to look beyond all this clutter of all this
Mm-hmm. Right.
negative garbage that's going to be thrown at us. I'll be called everything in the book, and
Oh,
just
without a doubt.
try to separate it out and say what is
Stick
the
to the-
real
why
issue.
can't
Is
they
your
stick to the
family up for the
issues?
challenge?
Oh yeah, they're going to be out. Well, I don't
Yeah.
know if they're up for it. They'll be ready
that's-
for it.
Why can't they stick to the issues?
Because they win by being negative and nasty and rotten. Because
that's a shame.
they if you destroy some, if somebody says enough that you're a bad person,
Right.
and they continue to say it and you don't answer it, you're going to be a bad
Well,
person, whether you are or not.
like I told you earlier, I've been attacked many times. But the people of my district understand and know that I've stood up and spoke out against other issues there. I just happen to not be politically correct. And like I said, listen to
Not
Timmy
either.
Comerford. He tells me you're the same way. You stand up, tell it like it is. And, sometimes you don't want to know the truth, but you got to tell the truth on the issue.
You do, and I don't like to have to tell people we got a 17 trillion
Right.
plus $1 trillion debt, and that we're going to mortgage our children's
How do
future.
we fix that?
Well, a lot of ways. I mean, one, growth policies that we talked about, cut taxes, cut spending, get the budget balanced and start to pay it down. And the way, there's $1 trillion, there are $1 trillion laying offshore right now from companies that because they were overregulated here and overtaxed in America, took their stuff offshore.
Right.
A lot of big companies, companies that you
You're
would
right.
know, Apple.
We need
and
them
other-
to come back.
and they want them to come back. So let's
Yeah.
give them some incentive to come back. Bring that trillion back, put it into investing here in America, create jobs, and we'll create more revenue to the Treasury. And instead of wasting that revenue and spending it on stuff and giving it away to countries that don't like us,
Yeah.
let's balance the budget, pay the debt down, and leave our kids, something for the future. You know how when people prepare a will, the older we get, we
Right.
unfortunately
Start
have to do
thinking,
that.
right.
Think about it. Do you really want to leave your kids all your debts, or do you want to leave your kids things that you were able to pay off, like your home? I would prefer to leave my home paid to my kids as opposed to the mortgage. And we're leaving the mortgage. And it's flat out wrong. And I say, these are the decisions, and that's why when these negative ads come, they know what the issues are. They got to cloud them, because if it boils down to, very simply, Bob Smith versus Gene Shaheen, and Smith says more freedom, pick your own doctor, choose your own health insurance, no spying, no having the IRS, harass you if you believe a certain way, truth on Benghazi versus we don't want, you can't choose your own doctor, you can't choose your own health insurance. We're not going to get answers on Benghazi. When it boils down to that, we win, and they know it. And so that's why they put all the other smoke up.
You brought up something, and a light went off in my head, and I wrote a note here about the will. Under Medicaid expansion, this here's setting up another class of people.
Sure it is.
Because they don't realize once they sign up, these are working people at 133% of poverty. Once they sign up, they have to sign their homes over.
Right.
Yeah.
That means they leave no property to their family. That means we leave
Control,
them in
more
the
control.
ghetto.
Control, government planning.
What do we do?
And you're going to lose, not only that, after you're going to get the money from the feds initially, you being New Hampshire, and then it'll go away,
That's right.
and you're going to be stuck with
And
the
we're going to
tab.
have to come up
Yeah.
with a revenue source to pay for it.
Yep. It bugs me because it's people sitting there who think they know better than we do about how to plan our
Right.
lives. I mean, how many times do we have to, how often does this have to happen before we finally get it and say, we got to throw these people out? And I don't care. Now, you talk about me being outspoken and not political. I don't give a damn if it's Republicans or Democrats.
Right.
If the Republicans are doing it, then throw them out too,
That's
whoever
right.
they are.
Yeah.
If they're not doing what
I
we're,
agree.
if they're not following the tenets of our party, and they're not doing, and they're a part of this
Have
central
their
planning,
R revoked.
Right. There you
revoke
go.
their R. Like it.
Yes, I
They
like
might
that.
steal that.
Yeah, I penned that myself, but
And
you're welcome to use it.
More and more businesses are saying that they're going to drop down below 50. They're going to put their people on part-time. They can't afford it. And then, not to top it all off, you're throwing minimum wage. And, for somebody that just starts up sweeping the floor, you're going to pay them, more money.
Yeah.
How do we get
Oh,
back
yeah.
on track?
Yeah, there was a war on Facebook last night on my page
you know what
about
I'm saying,
that.
Bob? How do we get back on track here? And-
It's all about who we elect. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it's oversimplification, but it's pretty hard, unfortunately, to defeat people that promise they can give you more. I got to run or you got to run. We all have to run saying, well, we got to cut back a little bit here. We got a debt, or whatever. We got to balance the budget. And then the other guy says, hey, 18 million more for education, 20 million more for the highway or whatever. That's, or X million more for the Medicaid
Throwing
expansion.
money at
Throwing
every
money,
problem.
every problem.
And it doesn't work.
And it's like, I don't know, and it moves into the politics as well. If I could, just on my race, as I said earlier, as we're speaking, apparently looks like Scott Brown is probably going to announce. So here's a case where all the national people are pushing this guy to come up here from Massachusetts and run in a New Hampshire primary. The establishment of the Republican Party here is pushing this guy to run, and
he's
you got
throwing
three.
money around.
You got three candidates: myself and Karen and Jim Rubens, all of us collectively with nearly 100 years of experience in New Hampshire politics. If you put us all together, what about us?
Right.
What about us? Do we have? I mean, the people of this state need to make that decision, and I think they're going to make it, and they're going to
there's
say,
no
you know
doubt.
what, Scott, Go on back to Massachusetts.
You know, I'm in the trenches big time. I'm all over the state on veterans issues. I talk with people, and believe me, he's got problems.
They got to vote, though. If they
right.
vote, we'll be fine.
That's the thing. We got to push out the vote. And you want to know what's going to be important in this election? We've got to make sure if they're not going to be there, that we're pushing, like the Democrat, the absentee
Oh,
ballot.
yeah. They get them in
If you
buses.
can't
They
be
drag them.
there-
I mean,
Yes.
they're
That's
amazing.
We've
aren't
seen it.
We've got to
We've
tell
seen
our
it.
residents, our voters, vote the absentee. Get your vote in there.
You ever hear?
if
You ever
can.
hear them say, "Well, we got to separate church and state. We can't have the churches involved in politics." You go into some of these black communities in the inner cities, and the reverends are loading them up on the buses and dragging them
right,
in to vote
yes.
Democrat.
That's right.
You know, or other
Or at the
areas.
colleges,
The
the
colleges,
colleges.
the same thing. And
And-
illegal registrations here in
Yep.
the state. Bill Gardner, who's a Democrat, by the way, give him credit. He
That's right.
stopped. They put a stop to that, and they cleared the voting rolls of all of that clutter.
Well, of course, now college kids that are here, they're paying out-of-state tuition, but yet they still can register to vote.
Right, and we tried to stop.
We try to stop it. I was on election committee. I sat on 2 committees at the State House.
It's wrong.
We had a
It-
bill this year too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if they're voting in New Hampshire, then why aren't they getting in-state
That's right.
tuition?
We try to
You're
call
saying
them
they
out
can
on
vote
it, and
here
they voted
because
it
they
down.
live here, then
Yeah.
Right.
then
Sure.
give them in-state tuition. But oh no, we can't do that. Like what? Oh, it's so frustrating.
Very
But you know, the last time I did a show with you, you left me with hope that you, because sometimes it can be so disheartening thinking about how things are going and where our country's going.
If I didn't believe there was hope, and I hate to use that term because Obama used it,
Oh yeah, let's come up with
Hope
a new
and
one.
change.
Right, yeah,
but if I didn't believe that there was hope for America, I wouldn't be doing this.
right.
I
Can-
believe there is, and I think I'll tell you where it is. It's in the young people. It's in the young people. We have to let them understand. We got to make them understand that this is their country. And do you really want to live in a controlled environment, or do you want to live and be able to make your own decisions, to succeed, to fail? It's your decision. And I think I think they get it. I think they're realizing now that there's probably not going to be any Social Security for them, and they're beginning to think, you know what? Maybe these selfish old people ought to just, including all of us, old to them, say, you know what? It's time that we step up here and we take control of our country, and that's where our hope is. And I'm going to try to get as many young people as I can involved in my campaign.
Since you're talking on people, young people, senior citizens, they're going to take a major cut. And I'm the chairman of the Elders Affairs Committee here in town. How do we make sure that people paid into Medicaid, that's considered an entitlement, which I believe it's not, because you forced them to pay into this all their life, how do we protect our seniors from all these cuts?
It's tough. I mean, I believe that all commitments that were made should be kept, and any reforms or changes that we make in Social Security or Medicare
Right.
should be for the new,
right.
not take any benefit. And that's where it gets demagogued.
So you're willing to hear today, so the seniors watching this, you're going to make sure the seniors that are paid into the system
Oh, absolutely.
are protected.
Absolutely, it's a
Yeah.
commitment. It's a promise,
Right.
same as veterans.
Yes.
Whatever promises were made, promises kept. I don't believe in breaking promises or commitments. And but we need to reform it, otherwise
Right.
the veterans and the seniors,
the seniors
50
down the
years from
road.
now are not
Right.
going to have it.
I agree.
And that's where the
How
reform
much time do we have?
We have a little under 5 minutes. I wanted to get back to something you said earlier. You have to watch what you say. So I just want to disclose, my friend and I, we said loose women, but we joke like that all the time. And I meant no malice to people like that. She calls me a pig every week. We have a buffet at our table every Wednesday at the State House, and I'm called a pig every week, and she doesn't mean it that way. We have
Right.
names for you too.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. But anyway, since we got about 5 minutes, I want you to look in the camera here, or look and tell us what makes you different than the other candidates, and why the people
Experience.
around the state should vote for Bob Smith to be our
Look
senator.
at you, or look into that camera.
I want you to look in the camera and tell the people that. Why?
Well, I would just say to the people of New Hampshire, I think many of you, I don't know about most, but many of you know me, and I tell you the truth. I think that we have a situation now where, Al, where the politicians and people in politics are not favorably looked upon, to say it, put it mildly. People are disgusted and sick of the broken promises, and we need to restore the confidence and the trust. And if I win, if you elect me again to the United States Senate, I give him my word, I'll work every single day to try to remain worthy of that trust and confidence, because it's important. And if I don't agree with you, or you don't agree with me, that's fine. That's America, and we'll do the best we can. But I represent everybody if I'm elected, and we'll work together to do what we have to do. But we cannot compromise on basic premises of freedoms under the Constitution. We cannot compromise on those. We cannot compromise when it comes to the freedom to choose your own health insurance and to choose your own doctor and to not be spied upon by your own government. I mean, these are basic tenets of freedom, and we owe it to the kids that follow us and the people who inherit this country. We owe it to them to do our part to preserve that freedom, and that's what I'm about. And if you want somebody that's going to agree with you every day and tell you that, our country doesn't have challenges, there's somebody else in this election to vote for. But if you want me to try to address those challenges and join with me to rise up and go after them and meet them and restore, pay the debt down, not overnight, take a while, and restore those constitutional freedoms, I'm your guy.
Senator Shaheen doesn't hold town meetings. Once you're the U.S. Senate, will you come back home
absolutely.
and hold town meetings
Sure.
and get the people's information?
Absolutely. I mean,
question?
that's critical. That's the best way for people to have access to their senator or their congressman or their state rep. It's absolutely a prerequisite, it should be, for holding office. I mean, I think it would be, I don't understand that, why
Right.
she wouldn't do that. I mean,
Well, she's hiding for Medicaid expansion.
you got to face the voters. That's your job.
What is it, 22,000, I think, here in New Hampshire lost their insurance over the Obamacare, and she's not doing a damn thing about it. Matter of fact, her and Cal Shea Porter and Custer, the congresswoman, are running from it, and it's a shame. Stand up. You voted for it, then speak out why.
Well, Bob, before we close, I wanted to thank you once again for everything that you did for the families of the prisoners of war and missing in action
It's
in
an honor,
Southeast
definitely.
Asia.
It's an honor to do it.
In the case you missed the beginning of the show, I personally knew several of those families, especially the family of Colonel Charles E. Shelton.
I knew them too.
I know you did. The last officially listed POW from the Vietnam War.
That's
So
awesome. Bob, how does
Thank you,
somebody,
Jenny.
before we close out, how does somebody get in touch with, and they want to help on your campaign?
Well, BobSmithForUSSenate.com is our website. That's the best way. Bob Smith, 4FOR,
Okay.
for USSenate.com.
Well, it's been an honor, and once again, Bob, it was
Thank
great,
you.
and I'm glad we got to talk about the POW
problem.
because it's very important to many of us. And I want to thank you all for watching Who's Looking Out for You, and we'll see you the next time.